Hello everyone, so in this video I want to compare two extremely similar cameras. Okay, so if you're debating and you see a lot of those for sale in used marketplace on eBay, Facebook marketplace, OfferUp, whatever, you see a Minolta XD11 and you see a Minolta XD5, they look almost identical. Okay, and in a glance you wouldn't be able to tell which one is which, especially if you look at the top. Okay, you won't be able to tell with only some extremely minor details. And quite frankly, the difference between those two cameras are also marginal. So the quick takeaway before you watch this entire video is, if you're in the market looking for a very nice, easy to use 35mm manual focus film camera with auto exposure, aperture priority, and shutter priority auto exposure, look no further than one of those cameras. Any of those is going to serve you well. It really comes down to the price that you're going to be paying. XD5 in general is going to be slightly cheaper because back then XD5 is released as a mainstream camera. XD11 is back then Minolta's top of the line XD series cameras. There are many other XDs, the XDG, XD whatever. None of those is going to be as enjoyable to use, in my opinion, as compared to the XD5 and XD11. Now, you also need to know that XD11 is sometimes called XD7 in European markets and simply XD or XD1, I believe, in Japanese, XDX, whatever, in Japanese market. So this XD11, again, is mainly for United States. So when I'm referring to XD11, if you know that this is also means it's XD7/XD. Okay, so let's just go over the basic features of those cameras. Again, they are extremely similar with only minor differences in terms of additional enhancements on the XD that makes it just ever so slightly better than the XD5. Now, if you have an XD5, again, usage-wise, you're not gonna notice any differences at all. They share the same shutter construction, same electronics. Both have 1/1000th of a second maximum shutter speed. Both cannot function without a battery. Okay, you need the button cell SR44 batteries for those, and both will offer a mechanical shutter at a fixed speed and a bulb mode that doesn't require battery. So just keep this in mind. Okay, and let's just get started. And for this features overview, I am just going to be using the XD5 because I have films actually loaded in the XD11. I'm shooting a Koda Gold 200 in this camera, so I'm not gonna press the shutter so many times and waste my frames, but I'm gonna be using my XD5 to show you guys the features of those two cameras. And again, they are almost identical, only slight differences, which I'm gonna talk through once I go through those features on the XD5. Okay, so let's start from the top. Okay, so obviously your most important controls is gonna be at the top. You have your film rewinding lever here. Okay, very quiet lever, very good action. Without any films loaded, this feels as smooth as my Leica M4 II that I've owned in the past. With films loaded, it's still a very smooth action. It's not going to be as smooth as a Leica. If you used Leica before, nothing compares to that smooth action. Okay, but this one, at least without the film, is very smooth winding. Okay, so, and also to talk about the shutter sound, it's very quiet shutter. Okay, and it's very pleasant sounding shutter. And I've used a lot of cameras. This is definitely on the pleasant sounding side. If you're shooting this on the street, it's gonna be a very unintrusive compared to some other cameras. For example, this camera I'm hiding on the side, the legendary X700. This shutter is very loud. Let's see if I have the camera turned on. Okay, it's like a loud clack. The film advanced lever is not even as smooth as the XD5/XD11, and it is slightly more advanced, but Personally, I still like to use the XDs because they are just nicer to hold in the hand, and their size is perfect. Their shape and ergonomics are also perfect. They don't have any of those fancy edges for you to grip on, but they just feel natural to grip in the hand. Okay, so again, your lever, the cocking lever is right here. Your shutter release button is right here. It is mechanical mechanical remote control possible. So you screw a remote control on here. There's a push pin that pushes down inside and it releases the shutter for maybe if you're shooting, you know, at night photography, long exposure times. You can use that and lock it for bulb mode. Okay. Over here, this is the main control dial. You can see this camera is very advanced back then because it offers a shutter priority mode, which is I think one of the first to offer shutter priority. And again, if you use shutter priority, you are probably a photojournalist or you're shooting a lot of street photography. You want a set shutter speed, one of those speeds over here, maybe 500th of a second. And then you set the aperture at this little green line here at 16, f16, and then it goes into the shutter speed priority mode, which is going to automatically control the aperture once you press the shutter. Now, it doesn't work because I don't have battery in here, but this is how shutter priority works. You put it on S, you set the aperture, the compatible MD lenses, any of those lenses that have the little green mark on the aperture is compatible with this function of the XD here. Okay, so you set it to S, set it to green 16th, and you set your shutter speed really quickly on the street, and you press the shutter, automatically calculates, gives you a perfect exposure. All right, so that's shutter priority with the function dial here. You can see the shutter dial here with different shutter speeds. Now, any of those shutter speeds without battery is not gonna work. My shutter is cocked, but it just won't release. The only place it's gonna release is in bulb mode and mechanical shutter mode. All right, the X is for flash sync. I believe it's 16th or maybe 125th of a second, as indicated over here. All right, so I believe again this is the flash sync. But I could be wrong. I don't know what the X is for. It does release. It does release once for some reason. I don't know why. Maybe the battery is dead or it's close to dying. But if there's no battery, it just would not work. If you put it on bulb mode, it doesn't require battery. If you press the shutter, it's going to open up the mirror and it's going to release. Same with the fixed mechanical shutter here. It's fixed at, I believe, 16th of a second. 60th of a second. Call me if I'm wrong. It could be 125. Again, I never used those modes, including the X. I always just had the camera on aperture priority, which, again, is indicated by the A. With aperture priority, all you have to do, change aperture here according to the depth of field you like and the lighting conditions. The camera makes a perfect exposure for you. So again, for any of those cameras with aperture priority, I think it's the best way to go if you want to experience mechanical manual focus cameras, because then you don't have to worry about focus and missing that shot on the street that you really liked. Now, if you shoot, 100% still subjects that never moves, landscape, for example, architecture, for example, then you don't have to worry about aperture priority. Maybe you can have a Leica and just put it on manual mode, or you can enjoy the manual mode in its full swing without any kind of camera input. It's going to give you a light meter in the manual mode, or is it? Okay, yeah, I think it does give you a light meter in the manual mode, but all the controls over here, you have to push. There are two controls you have to push: the shutter speed dial over here and the aperture over here. So that's a manual mode. This is just the indicator mark to indicate the shutter speed right here. Okay, and that's again the command center of this camera pretty much. You have a film count indicator right here. Right now it's counting 34, but the camera is literally empty. So now we move on to the film rewind function over here. So It's a little nice lever. Once you finish shooting, okay, maybe you shot at 36 and it's full. You want to rewind the film, you literally pull this out. But before you start rewinding, okay, for most of the manual 35mm cameras, you cannot rewind directly. You're gonna damage the film. Make sure you press the film rewind release button, which is right here. You have to press this button on the bottom. Once you press that, it releases the tension from the spool, which in turn, you could start rewinding your film, which your film canister is usually sit over here. You rewind all the film back in canister. Once you feel there is no tension in the canister, okay, that's when you're gonna close this and lift this up, and you're gonna lift again to pop the back film door open to expose your film right here. The film feeds through here. When you install the film, you drag the film strip through the shutter curtain right here, and you're gonna put that bottom of the edge into this little slot right here, and you're gonna start caulking the shutter. And let's see if I can put it on the manual mode. And you're gonna caulk the shutter until the film catches into this little nut over here and starts rolling. Once it starts to roll, you gently close the film door, start winding and pressing the shutter, winding and pressing the shutter until the advance indicator goes to 1. That means you are ready for your first shot. Okay, so the film is the leading edge of the film is loaded. Now the actual film is right here, sitting, ready to be exposed. When you press the shutter, that shutter curtain opens, and it makes an exposure according to the time, correct time, and it makes the magic happen on the film. Okay, so that's how you open the film door, is through this little rewinding knob. You pull it up, and you pull again, open it up. Every time you open this up, the film counter is going to go back to S, which probably means empty for some reason. Now over here, this knob have a few other functions. You have a exposure compensation dial here, which works independently with the ISO speed, which is really nice. If you have a Olympus camera, a lot of their exposure compensation is built with the ISO dial. So every time you change your ISO, this little exposure compensation dial on the Olympus has to be changed, okay? This one goes in one-stop increments, which again, personally for me, is a little bit too big. On the Olympus, it's 0.3 increments, which I think is more helpful for shooting slides, especially. But for the one-stop increments, it's good for black and white and color negative films. So you have -2 all the way to +2, okay? So once you do the exposure compensation, there's a little indicator inside, I believe. Let me see if it works. Okay, so it doesn't work. On the Olympus, there is an indicator inside telling you that exposure compensation is enabled. Unfortunately, for this older camera, it does not have that. And I don't know, for the X700, does it? Yes. So for X700, they actually put a little nice exposure compensation reminder in the viewfinder. So if you forget to put this back, you will know in the viewfinder. That's the exposure compensation. This little knob controls the ISO dial here, okay? I believe, let's see. So if you press this, you can change the ISO. ISO goes all the way to 3200 for maybe a T-Max, and it goes as low as 12, which is pretty amazing. And 12, 25, 50, so those are really, really slow films. You don't see those films anymore nowadays, a specialty film. Nowadays, for the most part, you're probably going to be using anything from a slides of 50 ISO all the way to maybe a 400 to 800 ISO black and white film. And for that purpose, the cool thing is, if you don't want to use the full stop exposure compensation dial, you could use your ISO dial to do exposure compensation as well. So, and the ISO dial actually goes in a third of an increment. So in a sense, this is one stop, this is the third increment exposure compensation. Now again, as you get into film photography, you would know what I'm talking about. Those features are useful for people who actually use them a lot in difficult to meter situations that they want to make an accurate exposure. They're going to be using those features quite a lot. So those are actually considered advanced features on old 35mm film cameras. And they're quite helpful, okay? So that actually concludes the top part of the journey. You have a little hot shoe over here. I don't know if this is through the lens metering enabled. Again, I do not know, so let me know in the comments if you know. This could be just a power indicator contact. So when the flash is recharged full, if you're using a compatible Minolta camera, if it's recharged full, through this little contact, it will have a display in there to let you know that you can fire the camera with proper flash. And that's all that it does, I believe. Okay, so that's the top of the camera. Now, I'll talk about the differences on the top over here. So again, differences are minor with the XD11 top of the line, okay? You can see there's a little light window over here. I do not know what this is for, okay? I never figured out, but that's a difference between this one and this one on the XD5. You don't see that little window. Another difference that you cannot see immediately is that the top of the XD11 is full metal. It's I believe it's aluminum top, and over here on the XD5 is plastic. So the weight of this camera is ever so slightly lighter, again, only because of the plastic top and slightly simpler construction of the camera. The bottom of both cameras are actually fully metal. Okay, so the bottom is all metal. Keep that in mind. That's a difference on the top. Another difference, very slight, is on the XD11, you have the exposure compensation over here. Okay. The XD5 came out after XD11. I think for shooting in general, it is quicker to change your exposure over here from the inside with this little finger over here. And it's also less likely that you're gonna bump into things and change the exposure compensation by mistake. So they improved the exposure compensation dial location just ever so slightly. That will be all the differences on the top of the camera. Usually, in general, top-of-the-line cameras come with faster lenses. So in this case, the XD11 would usually come with a 50mm f1.4, which is actually half a stop faster than the 50mm f1.7 that usually comes with a mainstream lens over here. Now in actual use, both of the lenses are extremely sharp, very fun to use, produces beautiful bokeh, and great for general purpose. So you're not gonna miss a lot by going with the 50 f1.7 compared to the 50 f1.4. But f1.4 does give you half a stop more light if you shoot a lot of times in low light, or if you use slower films. This comes as a slight advantage. Okay, let's look at the front of the camera. Again, in the front, both of those cameras is going to be exactly the same. Now, you'll notice that the texture of those cameras are different. The Minolta XD series of the cameras are infamous for shrinking films. Now, I'm lucky because this film has been preserved. This camera has been preserved well, so the film has not been shrinked for the cover, leatherette cover. But over here, you can see the shrinkage. It starts to happen over here. So this camera, I upgraded it. I did a full cover upgrade, and this is a super grippy cover. So in terms of use, it actually works a lot better than the stock cover on the original XD. It's a little bit slippery, okay? So if you have the chance, or if you get an XD and your cover is shrinked and it's beat up, just get one of those nice covers, super grippy covers. It's gonna transform the user experience of you holding the camera, okay? So take my words. Again, front, both XD5, XD11/XD7 is gonna be exactly the same. You have a self-timer over here. Self-timer operates by, if you cock the shutter, okay? And I'm in the mechanical shutter, you pull this all the way down to self-time. And once you're ready, you do a self-portrait, you press the shutter. Self-timer will advance. This is mechanical, by the way. And you'll see this. it pops up once the shot has been pressed. So this little mechanical shutter basically releases the or pushes the shutter to make it release. That's how the self-timer works on those vintage cameras. On the other side, you have a depth of field preview button, all metal, looks really nice. So if you do set a aperture that's not default, you'll see, okay, it previews the aperture, gives you depth of field preview, which is really nice. There's a PC sync socket for all of the camera flashes or really old flashes that connects a wire over here to the top code shoe, but usually you don't need to use this nowadays unless you're in the studio. This is a lens release button. You press this, you're gonna release the lens of the camera. Okay, it uses MD mount, SR mount lens, and again, this is what it looks like inside. It's called single lens reflex. There's a little mirror over here that reflects the light, goes from the lens to the top of the prism, and there's a little fancy prism, glass prism on the top, transmits the image here in the viewfinder. If you look directly in the viewfinder, you're not going to see anything because it's just basically projecting whatever is being projected on that particular screen. If you put the lens on there, you might be able to see some sort of texture on the camera, right? So that's pretty cool. Okay, so actual viewfinder, physical viewfinder, which is really nice. So that's a lens release in the top. The focusing screen over here is on the top is fixed. It's not very easy to remove, but you can remove it and repair it if needed. But again, it's not removable easily. If you press the shutter, the mirror flips up. Okay, so it flips up and closes over there, and it exposes the back of the film panel, as you can see. So the film is going to be usually sitting there if you have film loaded, and the light exposes on the film makes a magical, it makes the magic happen. Once you release the shutter, mirror pops down, you can preview again. Okay, so that's a basic function of, you know, this Minolta XD5/XD11. Again, the front is going to be exactly the same. There's no difference. If we look at the back, again, there are some slight differences in terms of convenience features on the top of the line XD11. Okay, so look at the back. You can see there is a little knob over here, and there's a little nice indicator over here. On the XD5, you don't see anything. And also in the viewfinder, there is shutter information, shutter speed information, and the light meter on the shutter speed. But there is no aperture indicator in the XD5. The aperture is right here, okay? You won't be able to see it because on the fancier XD11, there is a little window over here. So if you look in the viewfinder, you'll see that window at the bottom. You'll be able to see the aperture. On the XD5, no, you are not able to see the aperture. So you have to just remember it, or just literally, again, it's a convenience feature for me. I know where I am usually. I don't have to look inside. I usually put the lens over here all the way to 1.7, 2.84, 5.6, and it goes into half increments. So you know where you are. You don't necessarily need that, but on the XD11, it's a convenience feature that you'll be able to see the aperture really nicely at the bottom through the reflection design right here. That's a difference. Another difference is a film running strip indicator, which is cool. Again, you don't really need it because you can always look over here and know, oh, okay, you're 1/3 of the way through the film. Same here. Oh, here, this is the first frame of the film. You don't need this, but this kind of gives you a nice indicator. If you don't look at the top, you know where you are on the film. Once the film finishes shooting, it's going to go all the way to the here. And then once you open up the film door, it resets back to the left side. So it's a nice feature, not necessary, but nice. Over here, you also have something that's nice, but not necessary. This is a viewfinder closer, okay? So you close this. In certain situations, when you're doing metering, you want the viewfinder to be closed for more precise metering and exposure. And again, this being top of the line back then, have this feature to close the viewfinder for particular specific needs of certain situations. Again, for a mainstream camera, no, it does not have it, but have I ever used this? For me personally, never, okay? But it's nice to have. If you close this, you know, it's nice to have. That would be all the differences over here. Bottom of the camera, exactly the same. And as I mentioned, again, the only difference between those two cameras are mainly convenience and convenience features on the top of the line XD11 compared to the XD5. The XD5 is perfectly capable of metering accurately, taking perfect shots. And it mounts all the lenses that this camera can mount. So there you go. If you can find XD5 for a much cheaper price, go with XD5. If you find XD11 for a great price, go for it. And if you must have those convenience features here, depth of field preview, you just have to spend the premium to get the XD11/XD7. Now, I'll show you guys quickly the viewfinder. Again, the viewfinder is rather simple. You have the speed indicator over there with a light meter that's indicated by the dots. The dots each dot is about half a stop. Okay, so sometimes it stops at a full stop and it will show up as a single dot sometimes. Okay, so as you can see, so it kind of works like that, and pretty cool, pretty easy to use, very intuitive. Same thing here. The dot is not going to light up, but you have your shutter speed all over there, all available. Okay. Let's see what shutter priority does. All right. The cool thing is with shutter priority, even though you don't have the aperture indicator right here, okay, it will tell you, it switches to the aperture mode over there. It will tell you which aperture it is currently using. Again, for a photojournalist, that is more useful than the little aperture preview over here. Now it's gonna be the same thing here. If you put it on S, okay, it's gonna switch to aperture. Amazing. How cool is that? And it's gonna display the same aperture here, but it's not gonna be useful because you're gonna be setting it to 16. All right, so it's always gonna be 16. But what's also cool is, I think at the bottom, it opened up. Okay, now I know what this, it opened up the shutter speed indication over here. Really, really cool. Now that is projected by that thing that I told you that I don't know what it is for. Let's see if it shows up. So that little shutter speed is projected by this. Really convenient and cool design, okay? So yeah, definitely some nice features at the top on the XD11 that you're not gonna get on the XD5. But in terms of, mechanical part of the camera, they are going to be exactly the same. Last thing I want to show you guys is a very, very cool gadget for the XD series, which is the Minolta Auto Winder D, okay? This is a nice winder, and it's operated, or it's held by 4 batteries only, so quite cool as well. You can use rechargeable batteries. It's a little push release, really well designed, okay? And you have your tripod locking tab over here. You have some locking pin over here, and this thing grabs to the film rewind mechanism at the bottom of the camera. I'm gonna show you guys really quick. So you basically just gonna align all the holes right here, and you are going to turn this, kind of just mounting it onto the tripod. Gonna lock it. Okay, so I'm mounting it on the XD5. Again, it's gonna be same on the XD11. You cock the shutter. Now for the next frame, if you turn the power on, okay, you don't have to ever use the manual lever again, because here it is. It automatically advances for you. How cool is that? This is as close as you get with to the modern camera without, the only thing you're missing compared to a modern camera is a autofocus feature. Do you really need autofocus feature if you're going for a vintage camera? I would say no. This is as close as you get in terms of convenience in a full manual focus package. All right, one of those XD5 and XD11s. Love this winder, really compact, really well designed. And the very cool thing is once you finish with the film, okay, you press this button, it will enable a automatic rewind at the end. Now, I don't have anything loaded here, so it will not rewind. But if you do finish it and it doesn't advance anymore, press this button. It's a safety feature. You pull it over there and you push it on top. It's gonna rewind the entire roll of the film without you ever interacting and doing any kind of manual winding, which again, I think it's a very, very cool design on those levers, auto rewind levers. So that's pretty much it. If you close the thing, of course, it doesn't rewind. And again, if you have that on the camera, it still holds really nicely, okay? Holds really nicely. That sums up this detailed function overview of the Minolta XD5 and XD11. I really meant to do this a long time ago. I just haven't had a chance, and now I decided, yes, let's just get this done with. And then you guys, if you're in the market shopping for the camera, you will know what to expect. If you have any questions about those two cameras, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below. Otherwise, I hope you found this feature walkthrough helpful. And if you did find it helpful, please do hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Also, check out my film photography playlist because I have a lot more other film photography related contents in my playlist. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.